y1 and y2, very good. Does everyone see that? No, there's people who don't see that. Tell me why you don't see that. I'm asking, what are the basic variables here? And you should say, I'm looking for the variables that are isolated in the functional constraints. These are the functional constraints, right here and here. And there's only two variables that are isolated in the functional constraints, y1 and y2. Okay, they appear in one and only one functional constraint with a coefficient of +1, and they don't appear in the objective function. So the current basis is y1 and y2. And we're saying that the variable x1 is going to enter the basis. And who is going to leave the basis if x1 enters? Because we can only have two variables in our basis at a time. So who will leave the basis? Well, what do we have to do to figure that out? Minimum ratio test. Okay, good. So need a little space for that. What ratios do we compute? Right-hand side divided by the coefficient over here. So it's 5 divided by 2 is one ratio. And what's the other ratio? 3. Okay, so there I would just put a dash. We don't count that. So it becomes pretty easy to figure out the leaving variable. Who is the leaving variable? Okay, so it's a good question, and you don't count negatives because when there's something like the negative x1 here, if we're to make x1 positive, what will that do to y2? It'll only make it more positive. Okay, so in the eyeball, if I ask you, first of all, let me back up. If I ask you to eyeball the feasible solution associated with this canonical form, what is your answer?
0, x1, x2, 0, y1, 5, y2.
Right. So now I want to consider a feasible solution where x1 is a little bit positive and x2 is still 0. Okay. And in that kind of feasible solution, let's say we make x1 equal to 1. Could you give me a feasible solution in which x1 is equal to 1 and x2 is equal to 0?
Yeah, then y1 would be equal to 3, and y2 is equal to 4.
Okay. And as we kept bumping up x1, as I said, that was a feasible solution in which x1 was equal to 1. And if I said x2 is equal to 2, x1 is equal to 2, x1 is equal to 10, and so on. What would cause you to stop playing this game with me is when you drove y1